On today's episode of For Our Good and His Glory,
I met my husband. Of course, we fell head over heels in love with each other. Like, it was probably super toxic, but it was so strong. And I do truly believe now, looking back, that God brought us together for a reason. Probably should have got our act together a little bit sooner, but that ended up bringing us down a path that we ended up doing methamphetamine together. I had my trunk on my car open and I was putting stuff in there. And then I went back to my bathroom and I hear the sound. I didn't think anything of it. And then about 30 seconds later, I hear an even louder sound. And it was the loudest sound I've ever heard. And all I could do was run as fast as I could. My kids were both asleep in the living room. And as I rounded the corner to get into the living room, a flashbang came through. I know it in my heart. God let me feel every single ounce of pain and fear and just everything that my babies were feeling. I felt it.
Mm.
And it was a lot. And I fell on my face. And the only thing that I could think of to do was cry out right then and there. I said, God, I don't care. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care what you do with me. You can take me right now. Please take care of me. I'm free. And that's all thanks to Jesus.
welcome to For Our Good and His Glory, brought to you by Immeasurably More, where we sit down with people whose stories felt impossible, but God was working behind the scenes for their good and His glory.
Hey guys, it's Travis and Sarah, and we are back with For Our Good and His Glory. But this week, we have a guest with us. We've got April McMennamy with us, who has an incredible story. And you can see by that big old smile that she's also hysterical. So there's going to be lots of fun, lots of laughs starting now. But before we get started, let's hear a word about our sponsor, Freedom Caregivers and Companions.
Freedom Caregiver and Companion story began with one mission: to support families navigating the challenges of caring for aging loved ones. Founded by Hillary Bailey, their compassionate team provides personalized in-home care that helps families find balance, peace of mind, and confidence knowing their loved ones are in capable, caring hands. When God gave Hillary this mission, her goal wasn't to create a business, but to build a legacy. Her love for and experience with the aging population not only gave her a dream, but lit a fire within her to raise the bar on the standard of care that those who had spent years caring for others would receive in the comfort of their own homes. The care she and her team offer go above and beyond the norm. The relationship present is not just caregiver and client, but family. Freedom Caregiver and Companions provides compassionate, personalized in-home care across North Houston. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, their website, freedomcaregivers.net, or give them a call at 346-468-1000.
Let's go ahead and start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the internet and podcasts and the ability to just share your word and offer people encouragement. Thank you for April and the things that she's been through and the things that she's learned and her willingness to be obedient whenever you tell us to just go and spread the gospel. So I pray that you just be here in the midst of this podcast and you do exactly what you want to do with the words that come from our mouth. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
So when we have guests on the show, we are going to go through the acronym of TASTE, and that comes from Psalm 34:8. So in Psalm 34:8, we taste and we see that the Lord is good. And that is one thing that we built the show around, because we realize that through our lives and the struggles we've been through, that we have tasted and seen that the Lord is good from his faithfulness. And we want everyone to know what that tastes like. So we built that acronym off of the struggles that we've been through and the steps that we had to go through to understanding that God was the only way. And then getting to a point now that we can encourage others through what we've learned through walking daily with him. So what that looks like is our T is for the trials and the struggles we go through. Our A is after we've exhausted every other resource, when we've been looking at worldly ways or other people to get us through the mess, and realizing that God is the absolutely only one who can help us. And then we get to S. When we realize that and we've accepted with the A, we go to S for surrender. We surrender everything to God so that we can walk daily with Him and just let Him take over writing our story, because we realize we can't do it in our own strength. And then after that, we go to our T, which after we surrender, we know we're going to have testing and we know we're going to have pain. But because we know what it's like to walk with God, we're going to continue doing that, and we're not going to go back to our old ways. And then after we've walked through those steps and we've realized all of this, we're going to go to E, which is our encouragement. We can then encourage others and help them walk through some of those same trials. And that's what we're doing with April today. So as you listen to her story, be listening for each of those steps that she walked through. We taste and see that the Lord is good.
All right. So, April,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay. So I am chaos embodied in human flesh. God made me that way on purpose. I think He made me that way so I could deal with the 2 little miniature tornadoes that I gave birth to. I am the mother of 2 kids. Emma, who is 14, same age as Ella, and Cash, who is 11, and he's the same age as John Michael. Our kids actually go to school together, so that's fun. And I'm married to a wonderful man named Curtis. He's so much better than I am, y'all. But I am also in recovery. I was a drug addict. Jesus brought me out of that. And now I've somehow found myself working at the local school where my kids go to. I love it. Would have never thought I loved it, but I sing, I dance every time I get a chance to, even though it like physically hurts my kids that I do. I'm free. And that's all thanks to Jesus.
Oh, man, that's so good. That's so good. So you kind of said that before, you're in recovery now,
Yes.
right? So tell us a little bit about maybe kind of leading up to that and kind of tell us a little bit about that story.
Okay. So I think to really get the whole picture, you have to know I grew up in a really chaotic household. I grew up around addicts and around people that were actively using different substances in front of me. It was never as stigmatized as it should have been for me as a kid. So I was experimenting very early on. I tried a plethora of different things when I was still in high school, and I really didn't feel that fear or that shame that I probably should have, and also it never clicked with me that, hey, you have this problem, that you are an addict and you come from addicts. And so as time went on and I would try harder and harder things, I liked it all. It was fun. I was like, oh, I'm having a great time, not realizing that I'm really slowly just chipping away at myself every time I did more and did more and did more. And eventually that leads to, I met my husband. First, we fell head over heels in love with each other. Like, it was probably super toxic, but it was so strong. And I do truly believe now, looking back, that God brought us together for a reason. Probably should have got to act together a little bit sooner, but that ended up bringing us down a path that we ended up doing methamphetamine together. And that was really what grabbed a hold to me the most. And so that's what I did. That was my drug of choice, was methamphetamine, and I used all day, every day.
Okay, so tell us about when you all started having kids, getting married, and what that looked like.
Okay, so my husband and I were not married at all. We were living together out of wedlock. Honestly, I think that poor guy asked me to marry him about 4 different times, and I told him no.
Yeah. So
But we were young and we were partying, and I didn't see the significance in it. I was not a Christian then, and I didn't really realize that it was as heavy of a subject to really just sweep under the rug as it is. And so I think it was about 5 years into our relationship, I got pregnant with our daughter, Emma, and we still did not get married. We still lived together out of wedlock. And I think,
Didn't you say at one point that, like, you knew he had set the stage and he was about to ask, and you were like, I know what you're about to ask, and don't ask it.
I get it. Yeah. But you guys have to realize too that I watched my parents have the most toxic marriage ever. They cheated on each other. They beat each other up. They seemed like they hated each other. So to me, marriage was just pointless. Like, I'd never really been around a healthy marriage. And I was like, okay, well, this is going pretty well, which, side note, I don't really think it was. We fought a lot too, and it was kind of toxic. But there was just something so strong there that pulled us together. And then we had our daughter, and we were like, okay, well, we're going to get married eventually. And so I think, if I'm remembering correctly, we broke up for a little bit because obviously there were substances. It wasn't the meth yet. It was alcohol. That was the big thing in between us then, because we were both pretty heavy drinkers. And we broke up for whatever reason, with alcohol being one of the main factors. And we were apart for about a month and a half. And then when we got back together, I was like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, either we're going to be together or we're not going to be together. He was like, I'll marry you tomorrow. And I was like, okay, let's get married on New Year's Eve. Because in my mind, in my little addict-riddled mind, when we got married on New Year's Eve, we would always have an excuse to party. So we thought grandparents would watch the kids. Somebody would, because it's our anniversary. We have to go party, right? Mind you, we got married at a bar, the bar that we met at, the bar that I worked at. But we have to get married for free. So that was one benefit. We did get married. Of course, I was higher than Cod. So was he. When we got married, just wound up. And about 2 seconds later, I found out I was pregnant with our son, Cash. He was actually planned, though. We decided, like, I don't really know what went on, but I remember, like, we should have another kid. And he was like, I'm down. And literally, we were like, bam, pregnant. And so, of course, I pulled back off of all the things, because at that time, I think I had been popping the ADHD medication and, just not live, laugh, loving. But yeah, it was rough. But I stopped doing all of that, and of course trying to take care of myself. And the next thing I know, here comes Cash, little sweet thing. And in the meantime of that, though, in the meantime of me being pregnant with Cash, Curtis started acting insane, and I could not figure out why. But about 2 months after Cash was born, that's when I found the meth pipe. And up until that point, I'd never done meth. I was always like staunchly against it. I guess I had standards as a drug addict myself. I had standards. I was like, I'm never going to cross over to the meth and to the heroin and stuff. And so I was struggling with postpartum really, really bad. I'd been medicated for it, but then I had really no support at home. And I had him acting crazy and being really hateful. And I couldn't figure out why. I thought it was me. I thought I was the problem. So when I found the meth pipe and the meth, and that kind of explained everything, I didn't care anymore. I was like, whatever, if you're going to do it, then I'm going to do it. Which, looking back now, is insane. But my reasoning wasn't there. I was suffering so bad, and I just wanted to numb.
And postpartum is awful.
It was awful. And then, like I said, I had no support. I had no help. I was with my 2 kids, and it was rough. And I knew something was going on with Cash too. Like, he wasn't gaining weight, and he would have these little episodes where I thought he was seizing, which, come to find out, he had dysphagia. He had low muscle tone in his throat, and he had dysphagia with aspiration. So I finally got that figured out. And he would have therapists come out to the house and make these little electrical things on his throat to shock him, to try to get it. But he had to have thickened liquids and stuff. So I'm dealing with all of that. And then I found out that. So I was like, I'm going to get high too. Why not? And Curtis didn't want to. He was adamantly against it. He was like, no, I'm not ever going to do. I never want to cross that line and do it. And I was like, well, if you don't, I'll find somebody else that will. Like, because I knew other people that did it. And we did it. And we said we were just going to do it on the weekends. And we did it that first night and never stopped. So it is true. Like, to everybody out there, remember back in the day, we'd have those little assemblies at school, and they would say it only takes one time. That is 100% true, because it grabbed a hold of me so hard that very first time.
That just makes me think of, right? So you said that up until that point, you weren't a Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was your exposure to church or to Jesus at that point? Had you had any?
I had. So my grandmother, everybody needs a praying grandma in their life.
Amen.
And she's my nanny. That's what I call her, as nanny. And she was very instrumental in raising me. She kind of shielded my brother and I from a lot of the craziness that happened in our home. But she went to the little Assembly of God church in town. So I would go there, and she would have people come pick us up for Sunday school. But I will say this much. It was a little scary sometimes. And then other times it was very boring. And it wasn't a maintained or a sustained thing in my house. So my parents did not go to church at all. So it was only when I was at Nanny and Papa's house that we would go to church. But she always prayed. She always sang hymns. And she always would tell me, you got to give it to God. And of course, she's the sweetest, cutest person ever. So she'd be like, you have to give it to God. And she still says it like that, y'all. I love her so much. So grew up going to church, and I knew who Jesus was, but I didn't know enough about him. I didn't know what he did for me, if that makes sense. So
that's exactly what I was getting at. There's a big difference between knowing who Jesus is and knowing who Jesus is to you and what he's done for you. So I just want to point out, it is supernatural for us when we don't have a relationship with Jesus to go to things of this world to solve things like postpartum depression. It is not uncommon. And so we have a really perfect testimony to that. It's so easy to go to things of this world because the things of this world can bring us that temporary satisfaction.
Absolutely. So you said that y'all started, and once you started, you couldn't stop.
Yes.
What did that look like at that?
So it was great the first night. I was like, oh my gosh, this feels amazing. I don't hate my life. I don't wish I was dead right now. But very quickly, it descended into absolute pandemonium. And I think this goes for anything and everything. You can't have anything other than Christ at the center of a relationship and not just have it crumble. And so it began to crumble. And there was this line that got crossed then too. Because I found out too, mind you, with this, that Curtis had been using on and off for our entire relationship. And at that point, I think we'd been together for 10 years. So maybe not quite 10 years, almost 10 years. And I felt so betrayed. I thought it was almost like he had cheated on me. I was like, how can you keep it? And so many other people knew about this. And I'm just boo-boo the fool out here. So there was a lot of hurt and just everything else that was stacking on top of this. And the whole time, the center of our relationship is a drug. It's a substance, and it's an evil substance at that. So we very quickly started deteriorating. Mind you, I'm still trying to take care of my kids, but I'm getting high. I have therapists coming into my house to deal with my son to help him get better. And I am wound up like an 8-day clock thinking that I'm pulling it off. I wasn't. And the depression got worse. I hated myself. And I think Curtis hated himself. I know he did, for what he had done with me. So when we crossed that line and he got high with me, I think there was a couple other lines that were crossed there too, because all of a sudden what was on the cusp of being abusive, like physically, jumped over the line. And the next thing you know, we're throwing down and he's dragging me across the yard and he's talking to me like I'm absolute dirt. And I'm like, I'm literally doing this for you. Like, I thought you would love me more if I would get high with you. I thought I would be interested in you again. And so it very quickly deteriorated and it went to absolute chaos. And I can honestly say that there's just chunks of time that I don't even remember, that it just all blurs together. And it's just gut wrenching to think about that. But we used for years after that.
Okay, so when everything got just chaotic, at what point did you finally come to the place where you knew this one stop?
Well, I never came to that place on my own volition. Actually, so CPS was called on us and they came out to the house and I refused to take a drug test. And if anybody knows anything about CPS, if you refuse to take a drug test right then and there, they're going to make you come up to their offices and take a UA instead of the mouth swab. So I was like, I can't lose my kids. I can't do this. And I told Curtis that, and I was like, we have to figure something out. And he told me straight up, he said, I'm not stopping. And I was like, wow. Okay. So some kind of light bulb. Actually, I went grocery shopping and I was walking with this buggy in Walmart and it just hit me out of nowhere. And I know for a fact that it was Jesus now, but it was, you have to get out of here. You have to stop this. You're going to lose your kids. And I was like, okay. I came home from grocery shopping and I went out because we have a shop. That's what we didn't get high in the house. Okay. I probably should have told you the guys that we were not those kind of parents. We got high out in our shop. which is away from my house. But I went out to the shop where Curtis was, and I said, listen, I'm not willing to lose my kids behind this. I need them. They need me. I'm taking them, and we're going to go down to Houston. We're going to go to my aunt's house, and at least stay down there till I can get cleaned. And he looked him dead in the face, and he said, good, you need to. I'm never going to change. Nothing good is ever going to come from this. And it broke my heart. So we kind of established that. And so I began packing. And he got up to go to work the next morning because he also maintained a job. He was a functional addict. And I kissed him bye because I knew I wasn't going to see him for a while. And I had my trunk on my car open and I was putting stuff in there. And then I went back to my bathroom and I hear the sound. I didn't think anything of it. And then about 30 seconds later, I hear an even louder sound. And it was the loudest sound I've ever heard. And all I could do was run as fast as I could. My kids were both asleep in the living room. And as I rounded the corner to get into the living room, a flashbang came through. And it was super loud. And all I could do, Cash was on the couch. It was kind of up against a wall where we have a sliding glass door as well against that wall. And I couldn't reach him, but Emma she was already on the ground and she was terrified. So I just wrapped her up and I got on top of her, and about 35 to 40 armed police officers broke through not only my laundry room door, but they shattered my sliding glass door, shattered glass all over my son. It came in, gun strong, get on the ground. And I panicked. Of course, I didn't know what to do. Emma was screaming, so I was on top of her, and they pulled me off of her and they slammed me on the ground. And I didn't even think, I didn't register that I didn't even know I moved, but apparently I moved back on top of her. And they pulled me off of her again and slammed me on the ground, and they put the barrel of the gun to the back of my head and they said, don't move. And all I could say was, please don't hurt my babies. Please don't hurt my babies. Oh my gosh, please don't hurt my babies. And so they had me get my kids dressed and get shoes on them. And they pulled them outside, and then they pulled me outside, and they raided through the house. And I knew right then and there it was over. It was done. And you talk about hating yourself. My kids were terrified. They were traumatized. And Cash was 4 at the time, and Emma was 7. And those poor babies, it was awful. They watched me get handcuffed. And they were begging to get to me. And I asked the cops, I said, can I please just go tell them bye? And they're like, no. CPS is on the way. And I'm like, whoa, my parents live across the street. And they said, your parents aren't in these kids at all. Their idea was my parents knew the whole time what was going on, and they probably couldn't pass a drug test either. So, which, who knows if they could have or not, but in their eyes, nobody in my family was going to be eligible to take those kids because they knew what was going on. And nobody in my husband's family was eligible to take the kids because they're all felons. They've all served time in prison. So I had to watch my kids scream bloody murder for me as I was walked to the back of a police officer. And from there, I get to wonderful Hood County Jail. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. The accommodations there are terrible. And they put me in one of the holding cells, and the way that these holding cells are set up, they're kind of like in almost like a C, but they had me directly across from the sheriff's station. And let me tell y'all, I bet these people, if they still work there, if they ever see me in public, they would probably turn the other way. I lost my mind. And I think it was necessary, but I could not stop crying. And I wasn't just quietly crying. I was screaming. Curtis was 2 holding cells down, and he said that's all he heard the whole time was me screaming, like sobbing. I had no more shame left inside of me, Excuse me, for what? I literally had one job, and that was a stay-at-home mom to take care of those kids, and I messed it up royally. And I remember them CPS pulled me out of the holding cell, and I had to go on a little visitation booth with them to sign this paper called Notice of Removal of Children. And I didn't want to sign it, but what are you going to do? Excuse me again. And they asked me, how do you get Cash to calm down? I was like, what do you mean? They're like, he won't calm down. He won't eat anything. And I'm like, me. I'm how he calms down. Like, I understand that I messed up early as a mom, but he's never been away from me. I'm the only thing that's calming to him. And they basically told me that he's just been a hot mess wreck. And I'm like, of course he does. So they tell me right then and there, your kids are going to foster care. We're arranging for them to go, at this moment, you have to sign this paper. And I asked them, I said, what about my brother? My brother's a good guy. And they're like, no, it's just not going to happen. And I don't really remember screaming, but I was screaming. And my legs stopped working. Like, they just fell out. And I had really awesome jailers that were there with me. There was a lady, and she had like that reddish purpley hair. It was like in a bob. I loved her. She was very hardcore, but she was very nice. And then there was a younger guy that, God loved him, he was probably traumatized from me. But they both had to pick me up under each arm and carry me back to the cell. And that lady told me, she said, you have to get this together. Like, you have a chance to fix this. And it's up to you to do it. Those kids need their mama. And I'm like, okay. And when I got back to the cell, I fell on my face, because what else do you do? As truly, honest to goodness, I know it in my heart. God let me feel every single ounce of pain and fear and just everything that my babies were feeling. I felt it.
Mhm.
And it was a lot. And I fell on my face. And the only thing that I could think of to do was cry out right then and there. I said, God, I don't care. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care what you do with me. You can take me right now. Please take care of my kids. And I didn't have this instant epiphany or this instant calming effect. I can't wait for you guys to talk to Curtis, because he did have a. Yeah, it was gross. I watched him walk out of his cell like 2 doors down, and he's just calm and collected. I'm like beating on the door. What did you do? And he just looked at me and he's like, I'm sorry. And that's all he said. And I'm like, great, he's gonna leave me in here. It was awful. But I didn't have that instant calming or anything. And it wasn't, I didn't realize it when God had started right then and there, because that was my moment of surrender. That I literally gave up everything. Like, I don't care anymore. Just take care of me. And I think I spent like 18 hours in jail. It felt like 18 days. Curtis did end up getting out before me. And let me just tell you,
Mama was not happy.
my mental capacity could not handle that right then, because I was like, he's going to leave me in here, because our marriage was terrible, by the way. You know what I mean? Like, it was not great. I was like, this guy doesn't even love me anymore, because my family can't afford to bail me out. I already talked to him. They're like, we don't have any money to bail you out. And his family pretty much hates me, so great. They all think that I'm the downfall of him, which it's not true. He was the downfall of me. Just kidding, guys. But anyways, I ended up getting moved. They made me go to intake, like where they make you go in there and they take your weight and they do all these things. And I'm like, what are we doing this for? And the lady was like, oh, for intake. And I was like, I don't know what that means. Never been in jail before. She's like, oh, general population. And I was like, what? No. I'm not. Well, I can't be there.
Like, they're admitting you? Like, okay.
And they did. And they sent me, I had this little roll-up mattress pad and this little laundry basket with like county-issued underwear. It's awful. And so I had to walk to the pod, and then I was still crying. And the lady walking me was like, you gotta stop. You can't let them see you like this. They're gonna take you for everything. And I was like, I can still fight. I'm crying. But I walked in that pod, and every one of those ladies jumped up. There was probably, I don't know, 10, maybe 11 of them. And they were like, we seen your picture in the paper this morning, baby. And I was like, huh? Oh, yeah, front page of the paper, y'all. 2 arrested in meth bust and mono. And mine and Curtis's picture is mugshots, which shame on them for that mugshot. But they circled me. These ladies circled me and they prayed for me right then and there.
Oh.
And I immediately started crying again. And like the biggest, like, no hair, probably not the Christian lady that was in there, that I was for sure like, she's about to just be like, you're mine. She was like, baby, you can have the bunk above mine and get some rest, because you could tell you haven't rested. And I was like, thank goodness. And I got up there, they helped me make my bed, and they helped me figure out how to, because when you get checked in, they make you say your name in the phone. That's how whenever you make a call, that you have to say like, April McMennamy. Well, it wouldn't work. No, they were like, you got to blow in it first. So you got to go, April, and then it would work. So they helped me do that. And so I got up there and I took about an hour long nap when they came over the intercom. And they're like, McMennamy, you made Bill. And I was like, thank you. And so I walked out. I had to wait for visitation to be over, which felt like it was forever. It was really like 10 minutes. And I walked out, and my father-in-law, who I would have never expected to see, was the one that was waiting for me. And he grabbed me, and probably to this day, the best hug I've ever received in my life. And he gets me back to his house where my husband is sitting, and he was like, dude, I wasn't supposed to get released yet. I don't know why. I got released and nobody was there to pick me up. I walked to this store down here, and I was freaking out that they were fixing to come get me again. So I just borrowed somebody's phone and called my dad. It was such a mess. But my biggest thing was, we have to get our kids back. I can't do this. This has got to stop. And my husband was like, okay, let's do this, So they made us call the CPS investigator. Mind you, that guy, I'm all about forgiveness. He was hateful. I get why he was hateful, but also he's seen me after we got clean and was still hateful. So on you, sir. But we had to call him and say that we were out. That was part of the deal. And so we called him. He was like, oh, you're already out? And we're like, yes. So what do we need to do? Let's get the ball rolling. And so he was like, well, first and foremost, we're going to set up a visit with your kids. It's going to be for 1 hour, and it's going to be at the Rockwall office because my mom used to work at the Hook County office. So it's conflict of interest. And just prepare yourself, blah, blah, blah. Don't talk about them ever coming home. You can't do this, you can't do that. I'm like, okay, fine. So we wait 2 days, and we get up there to the visit, and it's in a teeny tiny little room, like the tiniest, and it has a 2-way mirror back here. There's somebody monitoring us because apparently we're now a danger to the children that I've birthed. Like, I remember Emma had to go to the bathroom, and I wasn't even allowed to take her 2 doors down to the bathroom because I was a danger to her. And of course, as soon as they seen us, they started just bawling. And all I could do was just hold them in my lap and tell them I love you and I'm sorry. And they were like, well, and they said, Mama, when we first got to Miss Esther and Mr. David's house, they prayed for us. They prayed for y'all. And I was like, Miss Esther and David?
I love those names.
And she said, that's who we're staying with. It's Miss Esther and Mr. David. And as soon as we walked in the door, they set us at the table and they prayed for y'all to get better and they prayed for us to feel better. And I was like, okay. That was my moment. That's when I got goosebumps all over me. And I just felt like the Spirit honestly just wash over me because I knew enough about the Bible to know that Esther and David are both pretty huge key players in the Bible. And out of this whole big wide world of all the people that choose to foster, my babies ended up in the home of 2 very Christian, prayerful people named David and Esther. And from that point on, I just knew. I knew it was going to be okay. And I remember we left the offices. They made us leave first, which was awful. Because like I said, it was a 1-hour visit. And they wanted Curtis and I to get up and leave first so the foster mom could, mind you, she was terrified of us. All she knew was there were some drug dealers that she had their kids and she thought for sure they were going to come like breaking their house. And we're not. But so we had to leave the room first, and the kids, they literally had to peel them off of us. It was awful. But we met the investigator guy outside, and he was like, so I'm going to tell you right now, the state of Texas is going to sue you to terminate your rights as parents. And I was like, I'm not going to accept that. After what just happened in there, I knew that God had our back in this. I knew that as long as we made the next right move, we put one foot in front of the other, stepping right towards him instead of everything else, that God had our back. So I'm like, I'm not going to accept that. And he was like, well, even if you can fight that, you're looking at least 2 years before you get your kids back. And I was like, 2 years or something. I refuse to accept that I'm going to lose custody forever of my kids. And I was determined right then and there. Like, I had the determination that God had just filled me up with. And mind you, the day we got arrested is the last day either one of us had ever used, ever. So we ended up talking, and I'm like, well, what can we do to help our chances? And he was like, go to rehab. I said, okay, fine. That sounds terrible. But whatever. And so we hired a lawyer. We rallied everybody that we knew. We borrowed money. We sold everything we could, and we hired an attorney so we could fight them, because they did end up trying to come serve us with paperwork. I still have the paperwork that says the state of Texas to terminate our parental rights. And I was like, that is not going to happen. You're not taking them away from me. They are mine. I made them. So, and my attorney also said, you need to go to rehab. And I was like, okay. I quit using all that. I don't need rehab. She was like, get your rear end to rehab. So, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I ended up checking in to Nexus in Dallas, and you talk about the shock of my life. Okay. I thought I was some kind of like, hold on, we're going to have to back up there because this was a God thing too. I get there and I didn't want to be there. I made Curtis wait in the parking lot. Okay. Because I think it's different now, but then whenever you got there, you had to get there and do intake and wait for a bed. And if they deemed you necessary enough, they would give you a bed. I got there at 6:30 in the morning off La Prada in Dallas. And if you've ever been on La Prada in Dallas, it's kind of sketchy. And there was a full waiting room of people that are physically ill, that are physically detoxing, that are coming in straight from Dallas County Jail. And I was like, they are not giving me a room. This is crazy. They're churning people out, mind you. I still have Curtis waiting in the parking lot. And then I get told by some other chick that's sitting next to me, well, you can only have 7 outfits and 2 pairs of shoes. And I was like, huh? Because April don't play that, okay? April had probably 20 outfits and probably 5 pairs of shoes and snacks for days, okay? And I was hungry. I had 8 years, okay? And so I was like, okay, well, if they try to make me throw my clothes away, I'm leaving. My husband's in the parking lot. And it gets down to me and one other girl in there. And they finally called this other girl. Mind you, she's one of the ones that was vomiting. She's in full-blown detox. She is sick as a dog. And I'm thinking, they don't have another bed after that. And they're like, all right, come on, girl, to me. April, we got one more bed. Come on. And I was like, I have more clothes somewhere. It's too loud. And she was like, you know what? You're the last one today. We're feeling generous. We're going to let you through. We just got to check all your stuff out. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then I was like, can I go tell my husband? And they're like, yeah, hurry up and go out there, tell him and get your paperwork that I had, because of course I've left all the paperwork in the car that I needed, like ID and all that kind of stuff, because I wasn't planning on really staying. I was going to act like I tried. And I went, got it, told them bye. And I was like, I guess this is really going to happen. Because I remember being in that waiting room when I was the last one. I'm like, all right, God, if you really want me to be here, just show me. And then they literally 2 seconds later called me back there. They let me keep all my clothes. 2 days after I get there was 2 more girls that came in from Dallas County Jail that had nothing. And they just happened to be the same size as me. And I gave away every piece of clothing that I tried to keep and hoard to myself. So there's a reason God let me keep that. And then they put me, my roommate was this lady named Deidre, who just happened to be a homeless crack addict from Dallas, that God loved her. She had a prayer book, and I had already been in the room, and she comes in there and she opens this book and she starts reading out loud the prayers in every single corner of this room. And I was like, what are you doing? She was like, I don't know who stayed in here before me. And I was like, ma'am, don't you do crack? Like, I don't know. She was like, I can do crack, and God still loved me, baby. And I was like, okay. We ended up praying together every single night.
Wow.
We read the Bible together. We prayed together. We started our own little group in there. Now, granted, it wasn't really well received for a lot of the other women that were in there, but there were ones that did receive it, that needed it. And
the seeds that y'all probably planted just in those moments that y'all had no clue about. You might not know till you get to heaven.
And so the first week I was there, I was not allowed to leave. The next few weeks, because we had visits on Fridays with our kids, they allowed Curtis to come pick me up and drive me back to Rockwall for the visit, the 1-hour visit with the kids. And they would give me, I think it was like a $5 long furlough, they call it. And so I would, mind you, though, my faith is growing this whole time, but I would make him stop at Walmart on the way back. We had to have clear backpacks because you never know. And I filled my backpack with snacks.
Those are some good.
Those are snacks.
I mean, I was hungry. I'd been on meth for a long time. I wasn't eating, okay? And so I had in my room, there was a little nightstand by the bed, and I would fill the drawer up full of snacks. And all the other girls knew that I had all the snacks, and I wasn't being stingy. And so they would come in the room, and I'd be like, all right, well, to get a snack, you have to say a prayer with me.
Oh,
Can we pause for just a second?
yeah.
And then meanwhile, your kids are still with David and Esther at this
Yes.
point.
Yes.
So for my Bible people out there, would y'all agree that she was born for such a time as that?
Yeah.
Like, she straight up had a snack ministry going. Like, let's think about that.
Yes.
So, like, the way that you got here was super cool. So we've seen the tea, right?
Yeah.
We've seen the trial that you have gone through.
Yes.
And you didn't even know it was a trial.
Didn't.
And that moment when you were in the holding cell,
Yes.
you said all you could do was cry out to God.
Yes.
So she fully acknowledged he's the only one
Yes.
that's gonna help me get my kids.
Absolutely.
And so over the next little bit of time, You're working on your surrender. And then finally you say, hey, look, God, whatever you have for me, I'm going to do it.
Yep.
She surrenders. She ends up taking 20 outfits and 5 pairs of shoes where she didn't want to be.
Yep.
She gave people that didn't have clothes. She gave people snacks. Like,
And I was hungry.
this is what surrender looks like.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always beautiful, but it builds the kingdom.
It does.
Sorry, I had to get that.
It's okay. And so, like you said, the whole time my kids are still with David and Esther, the most amazing, God-fearing people ever.
So we're at a good stopping point right here for part 1 of our interview with April. And so join us next week as we continue into part 2 and hear how the rest of this story goes.
If you were blessed by this episode, we would appreciate it if you'd like, comment, share, or subscribe. Come back next week to For Our Good and His Glory as we tell the story of Sarah and I from the time we met until now.